morning and welcome again to Word of Faith Responds. Thank you so much for listening to us. We're so glad that you're here this morning with us, and we want to share with you some more wonderful things that God has been doing in our lives at the Word of Faith Fellowship. And so today I have Claus Peterson with me. Claus is actually from Denmark. He came here in 1997, is that right, Claus?
That's right.
And ended up finding his wife at our church, and they got married, and he's been here since he got married and has had a wonderful life here. But he wants to share with you about how he met Jesus Christ in Denmark. And it's truly amazing how God reaches out to everyone in the world, no matter where we're at, no matter what our backgrounds are. God loves us all, and God reaches out to us, and God wants a relationship with us all. And so you're going to hear today how God came to Claus all the way in Denmark and got to his heart. And if you were listening on Friday, you heard his friend Kim share, who also came from Denmark to our church a little bit later, and they were both friends together in Denmark. They spent a lot of time together in various churches and Bible schools in Denmark and Sweden, and became very good friends, and they still are very good friends. And so their testimonies actually are connected together. So if you were listening, you'll get to hear sort of the second part to that from Claus. And if you did not hear that, you can actually go to our website, and that is wordoffaithfellowship.org. And you can hear all of our radio programs. And so you can find the one that was from Friday, very easy to find. And so you'll get to see and hear Kim. And now we're going to hear from Claus. So Claus, go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. It's a major blessing to be here and to be able to share what Jesus has done for me, because there's no greater honor than to walk with Jesus. And to come from Denmark to Spindale, North Carolina, it's a miracle. And it shows me that I don't care where you are, what state or what country you live in, God knows where you're at, and He's got a plan for your life. And that was something I never knew. I never knew I had a call of God on my life. It was like all that was centered about was me when I was growing up. I was an only child, spoiled brat, so to speak. And my life was just tormented, because in Denmark, I don't understand the philosophy, but it's supposed to be one of the world's best countries to live in, and it don't make sense to me, because when I was there, we had one of the highest, if not the highest, it was definitely one of the highest rates of suicide. And if you have the world's highest rates of suicide, it don't make sense that it's the world's best country to live in. But all the world is looking at is material things, probably. So they look at the middle class. We have so many people in the middle class that it's such a so-called good country to live in, but material things cannot fill that void where God's supposed to be.
That's right.
So growing up, we didn't have no Bible in our home. We didn't go to no church. I didn't know what a Baptist church was growing up. You pretty much automatically a member of the Lutheran church in Denmark, and you get baptized, and that don't mean anything to you. It was just a ritual. You don't really never get any familiar or any insight in what it really is to walk with Jesus. So it was a foreign thing to me up till it took about 20 years of trying to fill that void with parties or drinking or whatever. I never really had no alcohol, problem or drug addict or anything like that. I was just kind of right there in the middle, but still tormented, because you try to fill your life with all these things in the world that can't satisfy that void in your heart. So finally, after about 20 years, it was in my early 20s, I started thinking, what is meaning of life really? Because my parents, they were always there, and they did an excellent job according to the world, because they really laid down their life and tried to do what they could and what they knew to do to help and raise a child. But it just don't work. There is just no peace. you can have all these material things. You know, I started having a car and bought a house, and you can do all these things, but it's just empty. It's void. There is no meaning of life and no direction, and that started hitting me in my early 20s, and I said, I got to find out what the meaning of life really is, because I asked my mom, what is meaning of life, but she couldn't tell me. She didn't know either. So,
had your parents gone to church at all growing up?
Not that I know of. If they have, I don't know anything.
Did you ever go to church growing up?
No.
Did you ever read the Bible?
You had to go to church about, I think, 5 times or so before your confirmation when you are in the Lutheran church. But the pastor, he was talking more about ball games and whatever. He really didn't have a hold of God at all. And so, no, I was not familiar with anything as far as church goes. But God was drawing me, and I started going to the library and start getting books about New Age, about all kind of spiritual things. And I am so grateful to God that if you really want God and you really want to know who He is, He will make a way, and He will put people in your life that you never knew and dreamed you were going to meet for you to have the right connections to get in the will of God. Because there was a radio program that had just gone for a while every Monday night, and they were inviting people in and sharing a testimony. And after
was this like a Christian radio
it was a Christian radio program, and it was a minister that had broken out and started finding out that Jesus actually healed people today. You can actually pray for people. So he started this radio program, and he was taking people in that could share the first hour, and then the next 2 hours you can call in on the phone directly, and they'll pray for you on the phone. Some of them in the back, and some of them directly on air. And I started listening to that, and I said, that's amazing, because the word that really got to my heart was, Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if He's the same today as He was yesterday, that means He can actually do the same thing today. He can heal people, take care of you, meet your needs, do whatever you have, He wants it to do for you. He can do it today. And that was kind of revelation to me, because when you look at the Christians in Denmark, they don't live like Jesus is the same today, and yesterday and forever, because it was more like a bunch of hypocrites, so sad to say. That was the whole mentality. In Denmark, if you become a Christian, it was almost like, what's wrong with you? What's your problem? And if you start going to church and mean business and really act like the way you're supposed to, the thinking was, you're going to end up in a mental institution. You're going to end up in Broughton, because you're going to go crazy, because there was such a wrong thinking about religion, or it was all mixed together, and it was all bad. It was something like, don't touch any of that. And the first 20 years of my life, I didn't want to hear anything about God, nothing, not a thing, because it was put into you that it was all bad, and they all related it to the Middle East. You see, that's always war. There's always something going on down there, and it's just not good.
So in Denmark, this is how the society as a whole was viewing Christians and other people who pursued beliefs and faith. Is that how Denmark was?
That's it. That is really bad. And when you first start serving God, it's almost like there's a handbrake or whatever on your life, that you can't really serve God, because you have that put into you that don't give your whole heart, because it's not going to be good. And it takes a while to find out, well, maybe that was wrong. Maybe God is good. Maybe there is a plan for God to come into your life and take, control, because you got to be in control of your own life. You got to have a hold of everything you're doing, and that's the sad part, where Jesus, He's standing knocking on the door and said, I want to be in control of your life. I got plans that you don't know about, because He says my thoughts are not your thoughts, and I'm finding that out and looking back from, the last 20 years, that God knows a lot better than me. I don't know what God has for me, and that's in one sense good, but But there's so many people, they never receive what God really had for them because they don't understand that if you don't give it all to God, He don't give it all to you, because there's no way He can give it to you unless you give your heart to God and start believing in God. And so I can't start going to that church, and it was all excited. And
now this is the church. So you were telling us you were listening to this radio program, and they're talking about Jesus is the same yesterday, today. So you decided to actually go and attend this church?
Yeah, I did, but I didn't do it right away.
Okay.
I listened for a while, and then I said, okay, since this whole mentality of thinking it's some wrong people, I'm not just going to go in there. I took my car, drove around the building where the people were going in and watching what kind of people was going in there, because I was going to see if they looked normal, because I didn't know.
This is, you were saying this is, you grew up in Denmark, you're saying if you actually go to church, they think that you have a mental illness.
There's something wrong with you.
So you grew up thinking that. So you're watching these people to see if they have mental illnesses as they're going to church before you go in there?
That's right.
So what did you find out as you were watching these people?
They look normal. I said, okay, maybe I can go in there, because I don't know anybody in my family that goes to church. None. No relatives. I never had any interactions with any Christians, so to speak, all my, up to that point in my life. So I didn't know. And you're always scared it's going to be some kind of cult or some kind of weirdness and some kind of, because that's what you have heard, been put into you. It's right. Something weird. So I went in there one day and said, okay, I'm going to go in there. They look normal. And it was kind of a shock to my parents, because they didn't have a clue of what was happening to me. Because they tried their best, and it didn't work, and I was always unhappy. And I never lacked for any material things growing up, but I was just unhappy. It could just never be satisfied. And I started going to this church, and they were preaching about Jesus, and he was like a healing ministry. He said, you want to receive Jesus? Raise your hand, and he would pray for them. And if you're sick or have any kind of problems, come on up here in front and we'll pray for you. So I raised my hand and I said, okay, I'll receive Jesus. If you say He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, and you can pray for people, for the sick people, and they get healed. I said, okay, maybe I can do the same thing, because if you're not healing them and Jesus is healing them, I can pray for them too. So I started praying for the sick too. And I started seeing people getting healed, so that proved to me that I was for sure nobody. And I didn't have any religious background, and for God to pick me and start using me to heal people, that made it real, real to me, that God is real. You need to change your life. And I started, in the beginning you can't stop sharing with people, but sometimes you share a little too much. You get too excited, because you gotta sometimes wait till God tell you to say something, but in the beginning you can't wait. And my parents, they didn't understand a clue of what I was talking about, especially my dad. He said, you're the one that's changing. I'm not the one that's changing. You do whatever you want to do. And I said, okay. I realized you can't force any excitement on anybody else. God has to draw people. So my mom started reading the Bible, and she started realizing, because she had been sick for years and years and years. And one of the reasons I wanted to go to those meetings was really that maybe I can pray for her. Maybe somebody can pray for her, because she had stomach issues for the most of her life since she had me. Something happened. I found that out later. And so I kept going to the church, and I was traveling a little bit with the man there that was preaching, and we were having services all over the country, and God was drawing me and wanted, a relationship with me. So I come to find out I need to know some more about God. So I wanted to go to a Bible school. I said, there must be more than because I don't really know. They were ready to put me in as a minister and take hold of the youth group and do all this, because I was no drug addict, or I wasn't like alcoholic, or I was just kind of in the middle class, just had my life halfway decent together, not together at all, but really just it looked like I had it halfway decent together. But when you don't know Jesus, you don't have nothing together. And I was kind of, well, don't put me as a leader because, hey, I'm here to learn. I'm here to find out who Jesus really is. So
had you just joined the church
just
recently, and they
yeah.
wanted to put you as leader?
Yeah, they wanted me to put me. I said, well, I don't really know how to lead people because I'm learning myself. It's all new, brand new to me. I don't have no religious background. So I said, I'm going to go ahead and go to Bible school. So after a while, I found a Bible school in Denmark and attended there, and I quit my job, and I went to Bible school and came back, and I said, well, I know a lot more about God now, but I don't feel like I know God the way I need to. Because you can read a book or 15 books about Donald Trump or the president. Do you know him? Not really. Not till you call him up and start talking to him. And that's the book knowledge you sometimes get if you don't press in and cry out to God and have that personal relationship with him. It's just false religion because you're talking about somebody you don't really know. But when you get to know God and have that personal relationship with God, it's real. And it's the true religion because it's not just something you read in a book. It's something you walk with every day. And for you to listen to this, God knows exactly where you're at, and he wants a relationship with you. It don't matter how many times you read the Bible. It's all about crying out to him and say, God, you got to make it real to me. You got to make these words, real in my life because they are from you. They are for you and they are for me. And the more I cried out, I just want to know you. I just want to know you. I ended up saying, okay, I got to stay for another year on the Bible school. They called it mission school. So I stayed there for that and came back to the church, and I can preach the gospel and pray for the sick, but that's just not enough. That was not enough for me because you can settle in and say, okay, that's it. And you're struggling with those lustful desires that you have grown up with, and God is wanting to deliver you, but nobody talked about deliverance. I went from one preacher to another preacher and said, hey, I got these lustful desires in my backpack here I'm trying to get rid of because they are tormenting me like I'm living in a prison. And that's not right. I feel, you feel like something's in your life that don't need to be there, and you need deliverance, but you don't know how to get it. And you try to find people, and Kim and I, we drove around the country to all kind of meetings everywhere. We were to services, meeting churches, and trying to find Jesus, and trying to get everything he had for us. And I talked to minister after minister and said, can you pray for me, and can you do this? And one time there was a real famous minister. I was chasing him down after a service. I said, can you pray for me because these devils, they are tormenting me. And he prayed for me right there and in Jesus' name. And sometimes you got to have more than one prayer. It's not just, it was great. He prayed for me there, but it didn't work. It has a lot to do with you got to be consistent. You got to, learn about deliverance. So it's not just a quick fix. Jesus, he wants to deliver you every day. He wants you to learn to join to him, and then sometimes it takes a lot of prayer to get some of these past tracks broken off of your life, because God wants to set you free. God has the power to deal with those ungodly desires, those issues. It can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be whatever. Mm-hmm. God has a plan to set you free. And if you cry out to God, he will put people in your life. And that's why I said, okay, I came back to the church, and that church was kind of, you call it liberal church. They were all about reaching out to people, but there was no steaks served there. It was all milk. It was all about raise your hand and receive Jesus, and the rest of it is good. And then just leave them there. You bring a lot of people in, and you don't take care of them. And when I was preaching, I always wanted to teach them and show, hey, there's a lifestyle that need to change. There is a Jesus that's waiting on you every day, want to talk to you and have relations. But they did not focus on that as much. So I said, okay, I'm going to have some more food. So I was looking for Bible schools all over the world. I was looking for America. I had a friend of mine, he went to Korea. Yonggi church out there was the world's fastest growing church, and I was looking for a church in New Zealand and all over the places, and ended up finding one in Sweden. I said, I'm going to go to Sweden. So I told the congregation one night, I said, you need something to pray for. You can pray for me because I'm leaving. I'm going to this church in Sweden and going to go to Bible school again. And they pulled me over afterwards and said, okay, you going to that church. You can't come back to this church anymore. You out of here. I said, okay, that's fine. But I just got to know God. I know there's a lot more to it than just live. I can't live like a hypocrite. When I started surrendering to God, it was either surrender everything or not everything. It's either live in the world or not the world. And God was trying to get the world out of me. Because when you start serving God, it don't just change, everything don't change just overnight. It takes a work of the Spirit to get all of that out. Like Moses, he was in the wilderness for 40 years to get the world out of Moses, so he was ready to be the minister God wanted him to be. And sometimes God want to pull you aside, and he want to do a work in your life so you can be what God has called you to be. And I was ready to find that church, and they cut me off right there, and I said, that's fine. I know for sure at this point in my life that God is real, and he's big enough to make a way. He has a plan for my life, and he has a church for my life. And if man tells me I can't come back to this church, that's fine with me, because I'm not serving man, I'm serving God. And God will make a way. So I actually packed all my stuff in my car. I didn't know where I was going to live, so I drove to another country and didn't have a place to stay. And I said, God, I know you called me to this Bible school, and I'm going to be there for a while, and I know you have a place for me to stay.
This is in Sweden.
Sweden.
You're starting another Bible school.
Yeah,
You've
so
been
I'm
to one, and now you're going to another one, and you.
Yes, sir.
Sharing with us, you really are still searching for God. You know there's things you're missing in your life, and I'm looking at the time here. We don't have much time left, but go ahead and tell us, because somehow you end up here. And so how did that happen?
Yeah, I went to Bible school there, and after 1 year, I said, okay, I can still go back to Denmark and preach the gospel and pray for the sick, but I'm still don't feel like I know Jesus the way I know. I need to. It's still like I told you about reading a book, learning how to ride a bike. You can't read a book, learn to ride a bike. You got to get on the bike and learn. You got to get with Jesus and learn to walk with Jesus. It's not just head knowledge. That can't, you got to learn to walk with Jesus every day. So I went to the second year of Bible school in Sweden, and they had actually just started up a third year, a mission school. And after 2 years, I said, I am still not ready. I still don't know the voice of God that I need to. I'm still struggling with some desires from the past I need to get rid of. And I signed up for that third year and was supposed to be a team leader, go to Poland. But right at that point, about 2 months before the second year was over, we were supposed to go out and knock on doors, and I was in the preaching class. And God put a person in my life. There was a lady there. God spoke to me. You need to knock on doors with her. And it was 1,000 students. And out of 1,000 students, now a lot of times I did not know a lot of people in that church. I didn't spend a lot of time with all these students. And what I spent time was actually crying out to God in the woods. I used to walk a lot out there in the woods and crying out, God, I got to know you. I got to know you. And for hours and hours and hours, I believe that's the only reason I'm here today, because I cried out to God, and God showed me one person out of 1,000 students 2 months before it was over, and she was sharing with me about Sam and Jane Whaley, and I didn't have a clue who they were and what was going on, but I felt like God was showing me I needed to find out who that was. So they had a meeting. There was a couple of churches in Sweden that was affiliated with this church in North Carolina. And I ended up going to the third year of Bible school there and said, I'm quitting. I'm not, right when it started, because there was a seminar, a weekly seminar where people was coming from over here, coming over there, and
from Word of Faith Fellowship,
from Word of Faith
here,
Fellowship,
North Carolina. They were coming to Sweden.
They was coming to Sweden and having seminars and teaching about Jesus, and that was a turning point that I didn't know, but when I look back, I see that was a major step for my life, because I started getting to know a lot more about deliverance. And these people was teaching about prayer that I never heard about before, but it was strong prayer. And sometimes it takes strong prayer. It takes whatever God, want to do in your life, so you can break the power of these soul ties and these things from the past. And that was something I never heard before. But God had really, it sound strange to your ears, but in my heart it felt like, that's right. This is what I need. And I started saying, okay, I packed my stuff up and I moved to one of the churches that was affiliated with this church here. And over the course of 3 years, I had been to Bible school for 2, I was in Sweden 5. So over 3 years, we were in that church, and Sam and Jane Whaley ended up coming over to Sweden and having seminars, and I got to know them, and I must say that they had something I did not have, and I saw there is something I need. But after 3 years, the churches in Sweden fell apart, because when you got sin in the camp, there's no way you can stand. There's no way God's going to anoint when there's sin in the camp, so it all fell apart. Kim went back to, he was up at that point and went back to Denmark, and I came back to Denmark too, and I said, okay, I'm going to spend the summer in Denmark, and then after that, I'm going to come over here to North Carolina and find out what's going on. And after that summer, I came over here, and it was like coming home, and I have not left ever since. It felt like that was the place I needed to be, because they could talk to me about the past. They knew how to be delivered from the past. They knew how to be set free from all the struggles you have in your life. And that was what I needed. That was what everybody else, all the other ministers, couldn't tell me. They told me there is a way to be set free from the past, and it is not right to live in sin. And most of the other churches, they covered it up. They did not preach the full gospel. And I heard the full gospel, and I've been here now for 20 years, and I must say I love it, and there is no other place for me, because God can take a man from Denmark and bring him to Spindale, North Carolina. I could never found that on my own, so I don't care where you at. You that listen and watch, God knows where you at, and he can make a way. He can put people in your life. If you keep crying out and keep believing that God is who he is, he will make it work.
And that's wonderful, and that is so true, Claus. What a miracle God brought you here. Now, of course, you found your wife here. You were sharing you came here to visit, to see how this church was. You knew Sam and Jane, and when you came here, of course, you were sharing with me before how you met your wife here, Carla, and you ended up getting married to her, and then you, of course, ended up staying. And so what a miracle it is that here it is, you're looking for God, you want more of God, you have things in your heart that you know God wants that to come out of your heart that aren't right, and you keep looking and looking, and God brings you exactly where you need to be so that you're finally where he wants you. And what a powerful testimony. And so we're out of time, but we thank you for listening again. This is Word of Faith Fellowship. We're sharing with you about what Jesus has done in our lives, and we are here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8:30 to 9. Thank you.